Welcome to video 3 of the walkthrough of the new Adult Social Care Assessment document. If you have not watched video 1, please go back and watch video 1 first, as this will walk you through the assessment document as a whole. This video is just looking at what the form does and the functionality should you need ongoing care and support and you require a budget for that. So this video is going to start on the last tab of the assessment document, which is the summary of assessment and next steps. As I mentioned, video 1 would have gone through all the other questions on the other tabs within the document itself. So, is a budget needed for ongoing care and support? For this video, we're going to select yes. As you can see down the left-hand side, some additional tabs have appeared. So some of you may have the question of how does a budget get generated through this new assessment document. It's this question here, that is a budget needed for ongoing care and support, that generates those additional tabs down the left-hand side, which will then generate an estimated budget. It was decided by management that we continue to use an estimated budget calculator, so therefore we will always need the tabs down the left-hand side with the additional questions to feed into that algorithm, that complicated calculator that sits behind this assessment form to generate those estimated budgets. We've tried to make the form as proportionate as possible, and I will show you what I mean by that in a second. So unlike the first assessment document that we had when LAS went live a little while ago, it forced you to answer all estimated budget questions, even if you hadn't assessed for them. So we've tried to take that away to make the form as proportionate as possible for you. So I've selected that is a budget needed for ongoing care and support, so I've selected yes. And in the section below, you would then tick the relevant boxes for those Care Act eligibility needs where you've assessed and deemed eligible. Okay, so I'm just going to select a couple of them to start with. So you can see the 3 that I've selected. If we now go into the Needs Profile tab, and the Needs Profile is the document that generates that, that estimated budget. If I go into there, you will see that the 3 options that I have selected will appear. So the work and training and caring for others, etc. If I go back to the summary of the assessments, that's the last section within the assessment document itself. Okay, if I then take away those 3 that I've selected previously and go back into the needs profile, you will see that they have now disappeared, making the form proportionate to what you have selected within the summary of assessment tab. Therefore, meaning you do not have to answer unnecessary questions. For today's purposes and to show you all the functionality within this sort of needs profile section, I'm going to select every single section here under this question. So when moving over to the needs profile tab, you will see now that the tabs available to us are quite extensive, but that's only because I've selected all of them within that summary of assessment. The Needs Profile tab is around supporting you and explaining your situation. This one will always appear because we need to know this information, what support they need with regards to communicating. As you can see, they are not mandatory questions. We are not forcing you to answer them. This section of the form is also a smart form, so depending on what you answer, additional questions will appear. So obviously the form is as big or as small as necessary depending on the answers that you give. As mentioned in video 1, we have the new functionality of a little green book icon to the far right hand side. We have included this in the needs profile section as well, as we felt that we needed to give some guidance on some of the choices here within the needs profile section on all of the tabs. So you will notice that the little green book icon appears throughout the needs profile. And again, you can hover on it and it will bring the information up for a short period of time. But should you want to read the information more extensively, then click on it and it will appear on your screen and remain there until you click return to form. So as you can see in this one, it's just broken down what those options mean. So it's given you the option and then what that means underneath, as you can see highlighted here on the screen. Moving down to social isolation. You will notice now on this screen that we have some mandatory questions, okay? So as I mentioned, there's just a couple of things that I need to make you aware of. As I mentioned before, the tabs in this section, in the needs profile section, will only appear if you have selected those eligible need boxes within the summary of assessment tab, where you can see my mouse at the moment, okay? There's just two tabs within the needs profile that slightly differs, and I want to explain them to you now. So can you access and make use of the services in your local community by yourself, and can you develop and maintain personal relationships? They are two separate Care Act eligible needs. They appear on this tab together because they come under the sort of same umbrella, I suppose, okay? So if I was to go back to the summary of assessment and deselect the developing and maintaining family relationships, you will notice that the question is still here because it comes under the same umbrella, but there is no table that appears underneath this question like you have here for the accessing the facilities, okay? I'm just going to go back and select that so you can see the difference. So now that I've reselected it, you can see that the table has reappeared, okay? Now, before I explain these tabs and these tables, I just want to make you aware that the only other place that this is the same is your personal care tab. So being appropriately clothed, personal hygiene and toileting are all separate Care Act eligible needs, but they will appear on this same tab as they sort of come under that same umbrella within the form. Going back to the social relationships and community activities tab, as I mentioned, these are mandatory questions, so we have to feed an answer into the form in order for us to finalise it at the very end. So again, like in the actual assessment document, you've got some supportive grey text underneath the question itself. You've also got show guidance notes. So again, we've hidden that behind one layer of the front screen within this this needs profile section, just so that it makes the actual screen a little bit visually easier to read. There's not too much text on there, but should you want the guidance, then you simply put a tick in the box and it will appear. Once you've answered the mandatory questions accordingly to the person you are working with, okay, because you have selected this as an eligible need within the assessment, the summary of assessment tab, you will get this table appear. Now, it's really important to understand that the identified need and the outcome will copy forward to the support plan. So this works in a very, very similar, if not the same way as what you were used to with our overview assessment document, where the summary of needs table, those first two columns copied across to the support plan. We have kept this functionality as we felt that it was a really good functionality, and it saves you as the individual worker having to rewrite that information into the support plan or copying and pasting it. So please remember, these separate tables are what copy forward to the support plan in those red and those green boxes. Again, these sections are smart. It's a smart form, so depending on what you answer, you may get additional questions and you may not. Okay, it just depends on the tab itself and the answers that you give. So as you can see here at the bottom, I've said background and group support, and I'm going to select 4 to 5 times a week. I'm going to select a few options throughout this video just so that I can show you what the estimated budget calculation looks like at the end. The person that we're using is a fictitious person, so please don't scrutinise the examples that I'm selecting within this video. It's just to show you an example and to get the estimated budget score at the end. Moving on to work and training, again, you've got mandatory questions, so therefore it's selecting, you need to select an answer to this one. Caring for others, so just an example, if I say yes, I'm able to care for others, then the additional questions will appear, okay, or does not apply, then you just move on because it does not apply, nothing else needs to appear. Looking after your home, again, you've got the guidance link at the top, and because we've selected it in this particular example as an identified need, you've got the table appear. These two columns, remember, will copy forward to the support plan. So I'm just going to get some answers so that you can see how the form builds and how those questions appear. So how much support do you need with maintaining and cleaning your home? So you can see the options that we've got here, okay? You will notice that they are no longer in a drop-down format, okay? Because we felt that it was much better for you to be able to see all the options on the screen at one point. And I'm sure some of you have experienced when you click on a drop down in our current form and then you forget to move your mouse off of it and use the roller wheel in your mouse and you've accidentally selected the wrong option. So if you want to know what these options all mean, as I mentioned just a second ago, you've got the green book icon here. If you click into it, it will tell you what each of those options mean and a breakdown underneath, okay? So managing paperwork and finances, can you manage your paperwork? Yes and yes. Nothing else happens with these two questions. So moving on to shopping, eating and drinking. Again, you've got the guidance notes as you do on every section within the needs profile. So it's just making sure that you read the question carefully. So shopping, preparing meals, drinks and snacks, eating and drinking. Can you do all of these tasks? Okay. So if they can do some of them, but not all of them, okay, you would select no. And you will see that again, the options have appeared, and you will notice that there is an additional option this time, which is this one here I've just selected, okay? And the reason for that is because the being able to shop, being able to prepare meals and being able to drink are three separate questions. So it may be that they're able to shop independently, I don't know, they've got access to online shopping and they're able to prepare meals themselves, but actually sometimes they need some assistance with eating and drinking, okay? So that's why we've got that additional option. But again, all this information about what those options mean are in the green book to the right hand side. So I'm just going to select some options so that you can see how the screen changes. So should they say, I always need someone to prompt or support me, okay, you will get an additional question to ask, well, how many times do you need that type of support? Can you eat and drink by yourself? Again, I will select, I always need someone to prompt me. And again, you can see how the form builds. Okay, and the form builds in this way because we need to make sure that the budget that we generate at the end is as realistic as possible. Therefore, we need to get the information in the way that we are asking here in the form. Okay, so I'm just going to provide some answers. And then moving on to your personal care. So remember, this was one of the two tabs where all of the questions will appear, regardless of whether you've selected it as an eligible need or not within the summary of the assessment tab. So I'm just going to show you how this this particular tab works in full. So if I say no, I can't get dressed. As I mentioned, it's a smart form. Additional questions will appear. And again, in the tables, just as a reminder, because this is just a slightly different way of working from the overview assessment, that these two fields will pull through to the support plan. So I always need support and always need support. So managing personal hygiene, and again, as I've mentioned before, you've got the grey supportive text underneath. So depending on what you answer, so for example, if I select here as no, then you get the additional options and the questions appear underneath. Managing toileting needs. So again, I'm going to select no, so you can see the options that appear. So using the toilet and managing your continence, how much support do they need? So I'm going to just select the options so that I can show the estimated budget at the end. How often do they need support? And using the toilet and managing your continence, what type of support do they need? So what's the nature of the support? Moving around your home, again, you've got the guidance. The summary of needs table will appear because we've selected that within the summary of the assessment tab. Depending on the answer you give, as you can see, you've got additional questions. So how able are you to manage transfers? So again, I'm going to give an answer so that you can see how the form builds. Can you stay comfortable and reposition yourself? And can you transfer and change position without high risk of harm to others? Okay. So again, please don't scrutinise the questions that I'm applying in this video. I'm just selecting something so that I can show you how the estimated budget works at the end. So the health conditions, disabilities that impact your well-being. So you may be familiar with the overview assessment document that we were using, the health condition and disability. We had 2 of these that were mandatory. Okay, so you were only able to record 2. We now have 1 that's mandatory, and you can now record up to 4 health conditions if required. Okay. And how often do your needs significantly change? And obviously you've got the 4 options. Your medication. A lot of people have asked us who have seen this document already, say, you know, are you taking any medication on a daily basis? How many medication are you taking on a daily basis? Does this feed the RAS? It doesn't. It's not mandatory, so it wouldn't affect that calculation at the end. Can you take or apply your medication by yourself? Again, I'm going to show you what happens if you select no and how the form builds on that. So how able are you to take or apply your medication? So you've got the options. And again, if you want to know more about what they mean, you've got the little green book icon to the far right-hand side. How often do you need support with taking or applying medication? And you've got the relevant options. And does your physical condition or medication any medication that you are taking cause you distress or pain? And again, you've got the green book at the far right-hand side should you want more information on what each of those options mean. So within this new assessment document with the needs profile that generates that estimated budget, there is the ability for us to answer some of the questions which you will see on the screen now around skincare, breathing and consciousness. This will feed into the continuing healthcare checklist, which is automatically part of this assessment document, and I will explain a little bit further on into the video about what that looks like because it comes at the very end. But these are the questions that feed into that continuing healthcare checklist that helps you to identify whether continuing healthcare funding may need to be applied for or not. So these are sort of new questions to us all. So do you have a skin condition? If we select yes, as again, a smart form, additional questions will appear, and obviously you would just select the relevant option to the person. You've got a question here around breathing. So do you have any breathing difficulties? Again, if you select yes, the additional questions will appear. Obviously, if you select no, they disappear and you move on to the next question. consciousness, do you have any medical condition that can make you lose consciousness? So if you say yes, to what extent? So obviously you've got the relevant options, and again the little green book to the far right hand side will explain those in more detail. Your mental health, your mental well-being tab. Okay, so we've got the memory, orientation and decision making. So these shouldn't look unfamiliar to those of you who have used the overview assessment before this one was made live. As you can see, they're all mandatory questions. They do need an answer, but of course you've got that little green book icon to the far right hand side should you want more information on what each of the options mean. Moving down, you've got the emotional well-being and behaviour. Again, these shouldn't look unfamiliar to you, so you would just select the relevant options. The staying safe at home. Again, you've got guidance here should you need it. Can you stay safe alone in your home during the day and night? So if you select no, you get additional questions as you do elsewhere in the form. Are you able to stay safe during the day? Okay, depending on what you answer, you will get additional questions appear. Okay, so you can see how where I selected up to this point, nothing else appeared. But as soon as they say I am safe only if one person is with me all night, you get additional questions. So it's important to remember at this point that if you're assessing somebody who may already be in a care home placement, it's important to think of the situation that how would they be safe, if they weren't in that care home provision. So don't select yes, I am safe without any kind of support because they're in a care home placement. You have to think of it as if they weren't, as if they didn't have that support already in place. This will affect the budget quite considerably if the wrong option is selected at this point. Should you want to know any more information on how this section works, then please get in contact with the LAS improvement team and I will give you their contact details at the end of this video. Dealing with risk. The information that will appear in this free text box will copy forward automatically from this same question that appears in the assessment. So it means that you do not have to copy and paste it or rewrite it. Okay, so there is that copy forward function. And we've got the how effective is the support of others in reducing the risks to you and others around you. And again, you've got the little green book should you want to know more about the options that you see here to select. You've got this this sort of blue reminder at the bottom that if risks have been identified, please ensure that the additional actions identified within the assessment element are completed in a timely manner. So the informal support from family and friends, again, you've got the guidance notes here. Should I say no? Absolutely nothing happens. You carry on with the form and complete it as you normally would. If you say yes, okay, as everywhere else, it's a smart form, the additional questions will appear. As we had it in the overview assessment document that we were using before this one, each individual tab had a family and friends section, meaning that you were having to answer questions quite a lot about what support the family and friends were providing for that person, whereas we've now collated it all in one tab so that you're only having to answer the questions once. So which of these care and support tasks will the informal family members, friends or volunteers help you with? Okay, so as soon as you select one, you will get the breakdown of how many mornings, how many daytimes, how many evenings and how many nights, okay? And the calculator here is really clever. So let's say, for example, if I select all of them, okay, the calculator behind the scenes that generates that estimated budget is really clever in that it will work out that some of these tasks are only needed at certain times of the day. So, for example, dressing and undressing are probably only needed in the morning and in the evening, okay? Preparing meals are probably needed 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch and dinner, etc. Okay, so that calculation it is done behind the scenes, so you don't have to worry about that. So if we say that they're going to help with these tasks every morning, daytimes they are only going to do 2 because they're doing the weekends, because they go out to work, and in the evenings they will do 7, and the same for nighttime. Okay, so those options I've selected, that will be worked out in that calculator behind the scenes. The day-to-day tasks with regards to ongoing support, so these are things, as you can see from the screen: maintaining and cleaning your home, shopping, managing and attending appointments, and managing paperwork. Obviously, if they don't help or with any of these, then you can select that none of the above tasks. Okay. So other ongoing support, again, this section is, and the section underneath is proportionate. These questions will only appear depending on what you've answered elsewhere in the form previous to this point, okay? So there may be some questions on this screen that haven't appeared for me, so don't be surprised that when using this document yourself in a live environment that you get additional questions, okay? That is correct. They will appear depending on what you've answered in the tabs previous to this. So, for example, other ongoing support with social or recreational activities. How many times are they going to help with this? I'm just going to say none. What is the effect of providing care and support to the main carer? So this is, you know, what's the restriction that providing that informal support is having on that person? So you've got the options, and again, the little green book to explain a little bit more about what they mean. And does the care need breaks? Yes or no? The joint carer assessment question, this should not look unfamiliar to you. It will work in exactly the same way as it has done previously within LAS. So the record of completion tab. The assessment completion date is exactly as it says on the tin. That is the day that you are completing that assessment. Your current living situation, this was the information that was recorded within the very first tab of the assessment. So that is information that we went through in video 1. You are now adding your anticipated ongoing living situation. So this is not a definite, they're definitely going to move into, I don't know, maybe a care home placement or sheltered housing, etc. This is just an anticipated. So it's allowing that calculator to work out behind the scenes what costs may be needed should they move into that care home placement or sheltered housing. I'm going to select the same option as I did in the assessment for the purposes of today. You can also register the person with Controc within the assessment form. This was always sat outside the assessment form up until now. You simply just click on the link that would appear to register them with Controc, and once you have, you would get this grey text here that says they are registered with Controc. The moving to adulthood question, again, because this is a smart form, will only appear if in the work, education and training tab you have selected that this person is in education. So again, this question may appear, it may not when you're using this in a live environment. The consent to information sharing, again, can be added within the assessment document as it has done previously. This is mandatory. If you have not completed this information and you try to finalise the form, it won't allow you, and it will ask you to complete the consent to information sharing. So now we're moving on to the resource allocation tab within the form. Okay, and starting at the top, we've got the RAS QA. So as you can see, there is quite a lot of text in here. We apologise that it's one big block of text. It does take a little bit of sieving through. We are looking to make changes to this if possible, but I wanted to explain what this text means. So some of it is just identifying to you, the worker completing this assessment, if there are conflictions within the information that you've given. So for example, it may be that you've identified that the person doesn't have an eligible need with personal care, yet when you got to that question within the needs profile, you've said that they can't manage and that they need some support to enable them to carry out those tasks. So it's just helping to identify any inconsistencies in the answers that you have given. So it's really important that you check this information before you send it off for approval or finalise the assessment. There may be some instances where the information is correct. So, for example, if there's a difference between their current living situation and their anticipated living situation, it may bring up some text here to say, oh, you know, is that correct? And that's perfectly legitimate. So don't worry, it's not forcing you to go back and change it. It's just a check to just highlight to you as the individual worker, is this completely correct information you have fed? I just want to go back to the record of completion and show you what happens if I was to take out your anticipated living situation. You would, instead of the big block of text, you will get this hashtag NA. If you ever have that, it just shows that there is an important piece of information missing, which is normally the anticipated living situation. Okay, so if you ever get a hashtag NA, it's worth just going back through those needs profile tabs just to make sure that you've given all the relevant information. So going back to the resource allocation score tab, as you can see, you've got the estimated personal budget, which comes out at $239.62 for this person. Underneath, as you may be familiar with, like we had in the overview assessment, it breaks it down into the relevant sections. So for example, this person's had an allocation of $79.94 for daily living tasks, a $45.68 for household tasks, £114 for the weekly combined allocation for staying safe, and the other ones that have not had any allocation applied to them is because they're either not eligible or we haven't given the information. Moving down to the table at the bottom, this is a new function, and the budget estimate, as you can see, has what the indicative budget or the estimated budget was. So this figure should match what you see at the top of the screen here. Okay. The second figure down in this particular example is what the estimated budget would be if you were disregarding any formal support. And the figures underneath are just, it's just the information only, really, okay? So it's not that this person is necessarily eligible to have that £1,180 for residential placement. It's just information only to say that if this person should need residential nursing shared lives, this is what the budget may look like. So this table is just information only.